It was April 2018. The venue was the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans. It's usually a place of celebration, holding the residual energy of WrestleMania. But on this night, the air was thick with a different kind of electricity. It was heavy. It was suffocating. When her music hit that night, that iconic scream followed by the heavy guitar riffs, the crowd didn't just pop. It hesitated. Because the rumors had been swirling for months. Dirt sheets and insiders were whispering a truth that no one wanted to believe. They said she was hurt badly. They said the kick she took to the back of the neck at a house show in Uniondale wasn't just a stinger. It was a career ender. She walked down the ramp, but she wasn't in her gear. She was in street clothes, jeans, a leather jacket. Her hair was down. And in her hand, she held a microphone that looked heavier than any championship belt she had ever carried. For those of us watching at home, we know the visual language of professional wrestling. When a warrior enters the arena without their armor, they aren't coming to fight. They're coming to surrender. She stood in the center of the ring, bathed in the harsh white spotlight. Her eyes were already glassy, fighting back tears that she had probably been shedding backstage for hours. The chants started, Paige, 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 a deafening roar of love from the WWE universe. But instead of fueling her, the chants seemed to break her heart. She began to speak, her voice trembling. She talked about her debut. She talked about winning the Divas Championship on her very first night. She talked about breaking barriers, about the women's revolution she helped build. And then she dropped the hammer. Unfortunately, she said, her voice cracking due to neck injuries. I can no longer perform in this ring as an in-ring competitor. The air left the building. Ow. You could hear a pin drop in an arena of thousands. It was the sound of a collective heartbreaking. She was only 25 years old. 25. Most wrestlers haven't even hit their prime at that age. Most are still in developmental, still figuring out who they are. She had already conquered the world, and now the world was telling her she had to leave it. She placed the microphone on the mat, a symbolic gesture of a soldier laying down their sword. The image of her waving goodbye, forcing a smile through the devastation, is burned into the retinas of every wrestling fan. It felt final. It felt cruel. The doctors were clear. Spinal stenosis, a neck that had seen too much trauma too soon. To continue meant risking paralysis. It wasn't a choice. It was a mandate. Now, the Anti-Diva, the woman who screamed, "This is my house," was being evicted from the only home she ever knew. As she walked up the ramp for what we thought was the last time, the commentary team spoke in past tense. What a career she had. She was a trailblazer. The eulogy was being read while she was still standing there. The lights went out. The show went to commercial, and just like that, her career was dead, or so they told us. Do you remember watching this retirement speech live? Where were you when you heard the news? Let us know in the comments below, and hit that like button if you refuse to believe it was truly the end. What happens to a gladiator who is told they can never step into the arena again? The fans move on. The show goes on. Monday Night Raw happens the next week, and the week after that. New stars rise. New champions are crowned. The machine keeps turning. But for her, the world stopped. The years following 2018 were not just a professional purgatory. They were a personal hell. We saw her on TV, sure. The company tried to keep her involved. They made her a general manager. They made her a manager for other tag teams. They tried to find a place for her charisma, her voice, her presence. But look closely at the footage from those years. Look at her eyes when she stood at ringside, watching other women wrestle the matches she was born to wrestle. That isn't just sadness. It's torture. It is the look of a musician who has lost their hearing, forced to watch an orchestra play a symphony they can no longer hear. She later admitted in interviews that this period was the darkest of her life. She struggled with mental health. She struggled with substance abuse. She struggled with the identity crisis of being a former wrestler before she was even 30. The internet, as it often does, was cruel. They mocked her appearance. They mocked her struggles. They speculated on her personal life. They didn't see the human being who had lost her purpose. They just saw content. Every time she posted a photo in the gym, the comments would flood in. Are you coming back? One more match? Hope is a dangerous thing. For a while, she tried to kill that hope. She told fans to stop asking. She posted x-rays of her neck, showing the metal screws and the fusion. proving to the world that she was broken. "It's over," she would tweet. "Please let it go." But deep down, in the quiet moments of the night, the fire hadn't gone out. It was just buried under layers of fear and medical paperwork. While the world wrote her off, she was watching. She saw the industry changing. She saw her friend Edgeman, who was told the exact same thing, that he had triple fusion neck surgery and would never wrestle again. She saw him return. She heard his music hit at the Royal Rumble. She saw him taking bumps. She saw him main eventing WrestleMania again. If he could do it, why couldn't she? The seed was planted, but the road was treacherous. It wasn't just about wanting it. It was about anatomy. It was about finding a doctor who didn't see a liability, but saw a possibility. She started training in secret, not taking bumps, but moving, rolling, testing the limits of a body that had betrayed her. Every checkup was a roll of the dice. Every MRI was a verdict. For years, the answer remained no. No, absolutely not. The frustration was mounting. Her contract was ticking down. She was sitting at home, collecting a paycheck to do nothing, while her soul was screaming to be in the ring. She felt forgotten. The revolution she started had moved on without its architect. Becky Lynch was the man. Charlotte Flair was the queen. Sasha Banks was the boss. And Saraya. She was just ... history. A cautionary tale. But history has a funny way of rewriting itself when you refuse to put the pen down. By 2022, the wrestling landscape had shifted violently. A new challenger had risen in the industry, All Elite Wrestling. AU was becoming the land of second chances, the island of misfit toys where legends went to revive their passion. Her contract with the major corporation was coming to an end. It was a quiet exit. There was no fanfare, no tribute video, no best wishes tweet that broke the internet. She simply faded from the roster page. To the casual fan, this was the final nail in the coffin. If the biggest company in the world wouldn't clear her to wrestle and then let her go, surely she was done. But silence can be deceptive. Behind the scenes, the phone wasn't silent. It was ringing. She was flying across the country, visiting specialists. Not the company doctors, who were bound by liability policies, but independent neurosurgeons, the best in the world, underwent rigorous testing. They looked at the fusion. They looked at the fluid around the spinal cord. They looked at the bone density. And for the first time in 5 years, someone didn't say no. They said maybe. And then, after more tests, they said the magic word. Cleared. The secret was locked down tighter than Fort Knox. In the age of social media, where every return is leaked on Twitter hours before the show, this needed to be a ghost operation. No dirt sheets reported it. No insiders scooped it. The world believed she was moving on to modeling or streaming or writing a book. The date was set. September 21st, 2022. AEW Grand Slam. Arthur Ashe Stadium in Queens. New York, the biggest non-PPV crowd in the company's history. The women's division was in turmoil. Fatal four-way match for the interim Women's World Championship had just concluded. Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, the face of the division, was in the ring with her crew, beating down the victors. It was a classic heel beatdown. The fans were booing. They expected a run-in. Maybe a mid-carder coming to make the save. Maybe a familiar face from the roster. They had no idea what was about to hit them. Backstage, she stood in the gorilla position one last time. Her heart must have been hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She wasn't Paige anymore. That name belonged to the past. That name belonged to the girl who was broken. Tonight, she was Saraya. And she wasn't walking out there to wave goodbye. She was walking out there to take back her house. The producer signaled the cue. The audio technician's finger hovered over the button. The crowd was agitated, waiting for something, anything, to stop the attack in the ring. This is the moment where time slows down. The moment where a career that was pronounced dead suddenly gasps for air. We are approaching the moment of the return. If you're enjoying this story of resilience, make sure to subscribe to Ring Legends. We bring you the greatest stories from the squared circle every single week. The ring was full of chaos. Britt Baker and her crew were standing tall, mocking the fans, mocking their opponents. The heat was nuclear. The fans wanted blood. The lights didn't just dim, they cut. Darkness swallowed Arthur Ashe Stadium. The booing stopped instantly, replaced by a confused murmur. 20,000 people asked the same question at the exact same time. Who is that? A new beat dropped, heavy, grunge-inspired, aggressive. The song was Zombie by the Cranberries. In your head, dot dot dot, zombie, dot dot dot. The lyrics were hauntingly perfect. The Walking Dead. The Resurrected. On the giant Titantron, a name appeared in bold, jagged letters, Soraya. For a split second, the crowd's brain had to process the data. Soraya. That's Paige. But Paige is retired. Paige can't wrestle. Paige is gone. Duh. And then the realization hit like a shockwave. The roar that erupted from Arthur Ashe Stadium wasn't just loud, it was primal. It was a mixture of disbelief, joy, and absolute hysteria. It wasn't the pop of a surprise entrant. It was the sound of a miracle being witnessed in real time. She stepped out from the tunnel. She wasn't in a neck brace. She wasn't in a suit. She looked like a rock star. Leather jacket, makeup sharp, eyes fierce. She paused at the top of the ramp, soaking it in. You could see the facade crack for just a second, a genuine smile. Look of, I can't believe this is real. She threw her head back and screamed. The commentary team lost their minds. It's Soraya. She's here. She's in AEW. She walked down the ramp with a swagger we hadn't seen in half a decade. This wasn't the sad, defeated woman from New Orleans. This was the Predator returning to the top of the food chain. In the ring, the heels Britt Baker, Jamie Hayter, Rebel froze. Their shock mirrored ours. This wasn't in the script storyline-wise. This was a ghost coming back to haunt them. Soraya slid into the ring. The place came unglued. This is my house. Energy was vibrating off the walls. She didn't touch anyone. She didn't hit a move. She simply stood there, in the center of the ring, and commanded the attention of the entire wrestling world. Britt Baker, the woman who claimed to be the face of the era, retreated. She knew. The queen had returned to reclaim the throne. But the biggest question remained. Was she here to talk, or was she here to fight? When she grabbed the microphone, she didn't need to say much. The crowd did the work for her. But then came the phrase we had waited 5 years to hear. I'm back, and not just back as a manager. A few weeks later, the confirmation came. Full medical clearance. The nightmare was over. The career that was pronounced dead in 2018 had just been shocked back to life with the voltage of 20,000 screaming fans. Why does this moment matter? Why does a single entrance, a single song, make grown men and women cry? Because Soraya's story isn't just about wrestling. It's about the refusal to accept the period at the end of the sentence. It's about the audacity to turn a stop sign into a go signal. They told her she was too pale. They told her she didn't fit the diva mold. She became the youngest champion in history. They told her she was finished. Told her neck was glass. She rebuilt herself, vertebra by vertebra, until she could stand under those lights again. Her return match at Full Gear against Britt Baker wasn't just a match. It was a medical marvel. Every time she hit the ropes, every time she took a bump, the audience held its breath. We were traumatized by her past, scared for her safety. But she wasn't scared. She moved with confidence. She hit the rampage. She got the 1, 2, 3. She proved that dead is just a word critics use when they lack imagination. Soraya's return reminds us why we love this sport. It's not just about the moves. It's about the human spirit. It's about Edge returning from a broken neck. It's about Bryan Danielson returning from concussions. It's about Soraya returning from the void. When that music sounded, when Zombie hit the speakers, it wasn't just an entrance theme. It was a battle cry. It was a signal to anyone watching who has been told you can't, you won't, or it's over. It was a signal that as long as you have breath in your lungs, the fight isn't done. Her career was dead. The funeral was held. The eulogies were read. But on that night in New York, the casket was kicked open. The Anti-Diva didn't just survive, she evolved. She went from a tragedy to a triumph. And every time her music hits now, it serves as a reminder. The only person who gets to decide when you're done is you. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the sound of a legend returning. We'll see you in the next one.